You've lent the money, things are going well, and all of a sudden everything changes and we're in enforcement. What do? Their worst enemy, because now you're the evil person who's trying to take their house. You got the money when you were supposed to get the money. So now it's time to pay it back. Depending on how long it takes to schedule a sheriff to come out, they're gonna evict you. Evict me, yeah. And what happens to all my things? Well, you're gonna have to move your stuff. The ball is rolling down the hill now, and nobody can stop it except you. Okay, so tonight we're gonna talk all about the one piece of this whole private lending puzzle that nobody wants to talk about. And that is, you've lent your money, you've done everything you could possibly do to underwrite it properly, you've taken the proper steps in due diligence, you've lent the money, things are going well, and all of a sudden, everything changes and we're in enforcement. What do? Nick, what do you do?
I'm scared, Chris. This is as much as I love the space, just you saying that, I'm like, I get the little, and I've been on calls, with your legal counsel and everything, and I don't like this topic.
Jeff.
And I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know what I would do.
Jeff, what do you do? What's the first step?
The first step is, well, we call our legal team, right? Like that's step one. And it's usually a demand letter is sent out to the borrower.
Yeah. Okay. So what you've essentially touched on is you start the process. Now, when you start a process, here's the beautiful thing about mortgage enforcement is it is a very well laid out process, step by step, designed to protect you. And you've got excellent security, presumably, if you've done things right. And so there's no need to panic is the first thing. And let's all agree, the last resort is court. It's not where you want to be. It's not where anybody wants to be. And not because you're worried that you won't win or that it won't go your way or any of those things. It's not that. It's that court, first of all, takes time to get to, and time to me is the enemy here. You want to wrap these types of situations up as quickly as possible. But it's also, there's variables that nobody controls. As they would say, anything can happen. Now, in a situation where you've got, a mortgage agreement and collateral and you're registered on title and so on, obviously, a lot of those factors are mitigated. It's not a normal court situation where, you're suing somebody and the outcome is completely in the hands of a judge. It's more methodical than that, but we don't want to be there. And let's also remember, from an ethical point of view, you shouldn't be in this with the intent to end up in court. It should be, you're trying to create a win-win scenario for the borrower so that they can access equity in the house that they couldn't do through a bank, solve their problems, and go back to being a homeowner with a mortgage at a bank. That should be the intent. And so being in court is a last resort. Now, I also want to make it clear that in my experience, how would we put this? I guess sugar goes a lot further than salt. You know what I mean? So you don't want to pour salt on a wound with a borrower unless it's absolutely necessary. Now, the process is there to protect you. But when we press go on the process, we're still carrying the intent to work it out with the borrower. And the best case scenario is that the borrower does what the borrower's supposed to do, meets all their obligations one way or another, and pays you back. Like having to go and take possession of a property and then sell the property yourself and to get your money back, not desirable at all. It's also not a good outcome. You're not going to feel very good walking away from it if there's somebody on the other end who lost their home and so on. So everything you've done to this point is to try and avoid it. That continues. We don't flip a switch and go, okay, like Jeff said, we issue the demand and now we are enemies with the borrower. That is not the hat you want to put on. In fact, you will get a lot further in my estimation. Remember, there's a lot riding on this for the borrower. They have a lot of skin in the game. So when we start the process, the thing I want to make very clear is the job is to keep the clock moving, because built into the process, even though the process is designed to protect you as a lender, built into the process is periods of time, grace periods and whatnot, intended to allow the borrower an opportunity, a fair, legitimate opportunity to deal with the obligation and maintain possession of the home. Does that make sense? So court
Gotcha.
is the last
Yeah.
resort. Court is the last resort. Keep the clock moving. Those are the biggest two things. Now, managing expectations, very important. So, for us, we spend a lot of time leading up to. Well, let me back up. The two most common events of default in a private mortgage, one is a missed payment, and two is passing maturity. Those are the two most common events of default by far. Then the third one would probably be a lapse of home insurance, which is usually very, very quickly remedied. In fact, missed payments are often very, very quickly remedied. I would say, 9 times out of 10 or more, they're very quickly remedied. The one that's the least timely to be remedied is past maturity. And we manage these two things very, very carefully. So and my advice is you need to manage this methodically, because what you do have a responsibility in the eyes of the law. You have a responsibility to be compassionate, to be patient, to give the borrower every opportunity possible to fix things when they're not right, and so on and so forth. Whether it's real or perceived, you have that obligation, in my opinion. Again, my opinion. But having been through things, you learn, you get a feel for how things really work. When someone misses a payment, I can't stress how important it is to be prepared to notify them immediately. That, when I look around at some of the people I know in the industry who have challenges, more challenges than we do, by a significant margin, it's almost always, in my opinion, because they don't manage these types of things very, very well. When somebody misses a payment for us, a notification goes out immediately to them, and it comes with a grace period. So it gives them a week to fix it, and instructions on how to fix it, and options on how they can go about fixing it. What we're trying to do is establish a communication, right? The last thing you want is a breakdown in communication. If the borrower is talking to you, if the borrower is working with you, if they're making an effort, it may not come the way you think, but you can get to a remedy. Somebody owes you $1,000. The instinct is all or nothing. You need to send $1,000, or you don't even talk about sending nothing. But what if they send 500 this week and 500 next week? Now you might say, well, 500 this week, 500 next week, 2 weeks later, they owe me another $1,000. And yes, that's true. That's a new problem, right? But this problem gets solved. Missing February's payment gets solved by February 15th. Everybody knows there's another payment looming, and we may be into a cycle. But as long as the payments get made, you are managing this better than if they weren't getting paid. As soon as the payments stop, now the borrower or the lender is being impacted in a significant way, because that meter starts running and it's picking up steam. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. 1 month behind turns into 2 months behind, turns into 3 months behind. And the chances of the borrower being able to use their own resources to remedy the default get smaller and smaller as we go. So the need or necessity for the enforcement process becomes greater and greater. Does that make sense? You guys both get that?
I get that. But circling back to the demand letter, you said that the overarching, framing of this is not that the borrower becomes an enemy. How do those two things coexist? Demand letter and uncooperative borrower, but no kind of adversarial stance moving forward. How do those two things coexist?
Great question. I think it starts before the demand letter um, is issued. I think managing expectations are so important, and we talk about this at Magnetic on a regular basis. The element of shock or surprise is detrimental in the lending space, in my opinion, as an investor. I look at it and I say, I want to establish very early on. Remember, when you advance funds, you're their best friend, right? I mean, they couldn't
Yeah.
get the money anywhere else. You gave them the money, you're now their best friend. When they start missing payments, you can quickly become their worst enemy because now you're the evil person who's trying to take their house, right?
Right.
That's the perception. But you can avoid that, right? Because when things are good, you can build the relationship in such a way. When things first, when there's a first symptom, right? There's always a symptom of things going wrong before they get really bad. So and there's exceptions to every rule, don't get me wrong, but like this is why I take it back. Okay, so take it back to from before the demand, because Jeff was right. In enforcement, the first step is a demand letter. But before that, before lawyers get involved, there's a period of time where we're just working as an administrator to try to remedy the problem. So um, the first payment is missed on February 1st. A letter goes out that day. And the borrower has a week to fix it. But we're not just sending them a letter and there's no communication. Somebody's picking up the phone and calling them, hey, how are things? Everything okay? What's going on? Notice that your payment was returned by the bank. This is how it should go in an ideal world, in my opinion. Pick up the phone. Someone's maybe going through something, you know? Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen again. It could be a one time. Let's treat it as if it's the best case scenario, not the worst. The best case scenario being it was a bank error or there was something wrong. We shouldn't automatically label this borrower and get our back up and get into a defensive, sort of posture of being aggressive and looking at the hammer on the wall and wanting to take it off the wall right away. And how dare you miss a payment? Hey, you missed a payment. So what's happening? How bad is it? These are the kind of diagnostics that I think are so important and play such a key role later. Now, here's what happens. The borrower says, well, listen, I'm doing my best, but I don't think I can make the payment, for another, 7 days. I get paid on next Friday and I'm behind. What happened? Well, this happened, this came up, and it ended up costing more and more. My daughter needed braces. What could I do? I needed to pay for them. And so now I'm behind. I got to adjust. Okay. Well, what does the future look like? How are you going to adjust? Do you have a plan? Oh, yes. Well, actually, this is happening and I'm going to get some money from here and then I'm going to be okay and everything's going to be all right. Okay. Well, here's what we need to do. We need to have a plan for what you're going to do to pay this payment and how are you going to get back on track to make sure the next payment and payments after that are okay. Are we in good shape? Well, I don't know. If the answer is I don't know and I'm not sure and so on, you can always start to have a conversation gently about, well, listen, here's the thing. It's not up to me, if the payments don't get made, we both know what happens. Like the property has to be sold. But if it's a dire situation, it doesn't have to be us that sells it. Have you thought about selling the property yourself? Because if you sell the property, you get the equity. There's a lot of equity. There's 30% equity in this property. It's $1 million property. It's $300,000. Your problem is $10,000. So if your problem's 10 and you can get 300, have you thought about selling the property? Oh, no, I don't want to sell the property. Why not? Oh, I'm emotionally attached. I love this house. I've been in this house forever. That's when you start to realize, right, through conversation that there's a challenge. But now we can manage expectations and say, you know what? I totally understand, Nick. I get it. You don't want to sell the property. I'd prefer you didn't sell the property, but ultimately my job is to represent the investors and the investors are going to want not only their interest, but they're going to want their money back, at the end of the year. So what are we going to do? If we're not going to sell the property, what is the plan? Now, if there's no plan, if you can come up with a plan, great. If there's no plan that's viable, then at the very least, you can lay out the path that says, hey, listen, listen, you deserve an opportunity to try to make a miracle happen here. That's what you want. But let me share with you how this goes. Today, I'm issuing you an NSF notice that says, you got the email. It says you got 7 days to fix it. At the end of that, okay, you're going to get, when you don't pay by then, you're going to get a default notice. And that default notice is going to give you another week, but it's a little more serious and it comes with a fee, right? And then at the end of that week, so now we're 15 days in or 14 days in, now you're going to get a letter from the lawyer. It's a demand notice, and it's going to give you another week or two to come up with not just what you're behind, but the whole amount. Oh my gosh, really? Yeah. So 30 days from now is going to be your deadline. You'll have to pay the whole loan out. What if I don't do that? Okay, well, if that doesn't happen, then they're going to file what's called a notice of sale and a statement of claim. You're going to have about 40 days more to try to come up with the money. What happens if I don't do that? If you don't come up by then they're going to pursue a judgment from the court for possession of the home. Oh my gosh, and then what happens? Well, and then depending on how long it takes to schedule a sheriff to come out, they're going to evict you. Evict me, yeah. And what happens to all my things? Well, you're going to have to move your stuff to another place, or they'll have it removed from the place. So let me get this straight. We're talking like 60 days? Yeah, around that, depending on the courts. So again, either we come up with a look, that ball rolling down that hill started today. Like, it's already happening. So let's be real about it. It started. The clock has started. So I don't have to be your enemy. I'm rooting for you, but we have to come up with a solution. Now, here's the great news. If at any point, and it's shocking today, and maybe there's still some opportunities for you, there's some ways to deal with this, and you're not thinking about them today because it's so fresh, but you have 7 days before the next step. So take the 7 days, think about it. But if you can't come up with anything, you still have time. At any point, if you decide, okay, I'm going to put a sign on the lawn and I'm going to put the house up for sale, maybe then the process can be delayed, right? Because if you're doing that, you're taking a step towards solving the problem. And any steps you take towards solving the problem, it's in the interest of both parties to sort of, may not pause the process, but may not act on the next step yet, right? So we're always going to have that process moving forward because that's what protects the investors. But there are points in the process where, look, if you have the property listed properly and we think there's a reasonable chance you're going to sell it soon, maybe there's a little extra grace that can be built in, and so on and so forth. The idea being, if you're just listening to me and thinking, if I was in the borrower's shoes, can you see how those types of conversations, they're real? I mean, the situation is what the situation is. But if you take the approach of, hey, tell me what's going on, help me understand, let's work together, let's see if there's a way that we can keep you in the house, mindful of the fact that you have obligations to the investors. I mean, when you came to us, the bank had already said no. So you're in a position where if you didn't find a private lender, you were going to have to sell anyways. There was going to be no other option. So you found us, but we're not a guarantee that things are going to be rosy at the end. You access the equity in your property through a private loan, and the intent was to turn things around and be able to head back towards a bank. If things aren't working out, there comes a point where everybody has to just realize that's the case. But we don't have to be adversarial or confrontational with people. And Jeff can tell you from watching me do this for years, it's not how we approach it ever, but there are times where the process becomes your best friend because despite your best efforts, you are viewed as adversarial, and the stance taken by the borrower, which you don't control, doesn't allow for an amicable solution. Just doesn't. They engage in behaviors that effectively shut down the opportunity to have those types of conversations, whether it's the way they're talking to you, or their avoidance of communications, or a series of, I guess, call them lies, right? Just untruths, not telling you what's really going on, and so on and so forth. Those choices get made sometimes by people, but that's why I say your job is to start the clock. Again, when you tell somebody, hey, the clock is started, okay, good news, today the clock has 60, 70, maybe 80, 90 days on it. But the ball is rolling down the hill now, and nobody can stop it except you. So we don't have to be adversarial. We can be friendly, we can be, but we're not doing any favors by lying to people. We should tell them the truth, and it is what it is. And that process can start at the beginning. If you have good people in place like we do, at the very beginning, when we're talking to a broker or talking to a borrower, we're able to tell them, hey, listen, we're going to approve this loan, but you understand, right? This is, there's no lender behind us. So if this doesn't work out, probably the best thing for you to do, if you're not able to get out of this in a year or two, the best thing to do is probably to sell. And this is a very matter-of-fact way to explain all this to you. But that's how it goes. Does it make sense?
Yeah. No, there's so many things that play, because it's like you've built up so much goodwill by opening dialogue from the jump, so that whenever a snag happens, or an event of default happens, then it's like there's been goodwill built up. But also just the framing of it, like it's you and the borrower versus the snowball coming down the hill. It's not like you with the hammer. It's you and the borrower versus and then it's like, oh, unfortunately, the process is at 30 days, this is going to happen. At 40 days, this is going to happen. At 60 days, this is going to happen. But it's still you and the borrower against the clock, so to speak. It's a very, I didn't expect it to be framed that way.
Okay, now let me ask you this. Here's a great one for you. So let's imagine that a borrower misses a payment, that whole scenario we just went through. But before you talk to him, you stop and you look at the situation and say, what did this deal look like when I first, lent the money? Oh, okay, it was 75% of the value. Okay. And he was doing this and that was happening. And wonder what's happening in that market. So you look at, MLS, you go on, you look at properties around the house, and you notice they're selling, or they're listing at prices that are a lot lower than what they were when you lent the money. So you start to be a little concerned. And now you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, if I start the snowball down the path, what if there's not enough money to pay me out? What if there's a shortfall? You know what I mean? Like, you start to go through this. How would you handle that? And this is very interesting, because it's another really strong reason why you don't want to be adversarial or confrontational with your borrower. You may need them still. Can you think of something you would do, Nick? Can you think of like what you might do in a situation like that?
Now you really become their cheerleader.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean, if you're in second position, I'm speaking from experience. Obviously, I wouldn't say this as a casual viewer, but if they have a first mortgage, you take control of that mortgage.
You could,
and or I don't know if it's like a done deal, if that's something that can be done, in every situation. But yeah, take control of. I guess take control of the payments, like make sure the property taxes are paid, make sure everything's in good standing. That'd be my first reflex, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff, what do you think? I know you know some of this.
What can they pay, really, right? Like, can we work with them on a payment plan to get them back on track? Is it the first of the month? Maybe not. That's not good enough for them anymore, right? Maybe they're getting paid, it's maybe it's the 15th of every month. Can we make a payment plan that, better suits them? Can we customize something for them to get them to pay? Because ultimately we need that borrower to continue to pay for the investors, right? So
no question. I mean, this is where the art of private lending lies, in my opinion. Okay, you could do 100 loans in residential private lending, and if you do your underwriting well and you do diligence well, you literally might go 100 loans and there are no real major problems. You could also do 3 and step on a landmine. And when I say a landmine, I mean a borrower that on paper you approved looked great, was great, everything was fine. I mean, they needed a private loan for a specific reason, but it made sense. Everything was fine. You give them the money, and 2 months later, their life falls apart. Everything changes. And all of a sudden, it's a completely different situation than it was 2 months ago. Now, you can go back and kick yourself and say, how did I not know? And so on and so forth. But the ultimate, at the end of the day, it can happen, right? And that's the beauty of private lending, is that it's so strong. Like you could never have one of these, but it can happen. And when it does happen, you need to keep a level head. And what Jeff's saying makes total sense. So if I look at the market and I see that the property, when I appraised it before, I was at 75% loan to value, but today I may be in that 82 or 83%. And I look at, if I got full value for the property, then less 5% for real estate costs, there's only really a 10% buffer. And in a soft market, you never know what offers you're going to see, and every month matters and so on. I would be akin to doing a number of different things in my conversation with the borrower. I really want to be on the level with them so that they can be honest with me, because what if it's just a matter? So let's take the example I gave earlier, where something unexpected came up. The person's car broke down, or their kid needs braces, and they all of a sudden had a $2,000 outlay. Well, if the mortgage payment this month was $3,000 and $2,000 had to go to the braces, there's no reason why I can't take the $1,000, right? And why couldn't I, as a mechanism, as a courtesy, as a gesture of good faith, extend the mortgage by 1 month and move that payment to the end, kind of thing, So now I'm going to collect that on the end, but the borrower isn't trying to play catch up every month and struggling because the next mortgage payment came up so fast because they were struggling to make the one that they missed. Why not skip one?
So you're saying like defer a payment?
Yeah, why not defer a payment?
Yeah.
Get back on track. So the point of this is analyzing, right? Being able to open a dialogue, as you said, Nick. I thought that was so well said. Opening a dialogue allows you to uncover, hopefully, what the true situation is. And a lot of these cases, it's just a blip. It's something unexpected, but now they're behind the 8 ball and they're trying to catch up, and catching up, running on the treadmill. Sometimes it's unexpected funeral expenses for a family, or, it could be a lot of different things. But to Jeff's point, before you may start the ball rolling down the street in case discussions break down, cooperation wanes, those types of things happen, then you're not at square one. You're in the process. But there are concessions you could make along the way to stop temporarily or pause the process if you're able to come to a solution. Now, if you say to this person, was this a one-time thing? Oh yeah, it was just the braces. That's it. If I could just get back on track and be fine. And you go, okay, tell you what, I'm not going to stop the process. I'm going to pause it so we can pick it up at any time. I'm going to see, okay, I'm going to skip this payment and add it to the back one time. And on the 1st of March, we're going to see if your payment comes. You should be able to make that payment, right? If it was just the $2,000 that you had to spend, oh yeah, I should be able to make that payment. Okay. All right. So let's see. But you haven't stopped the process. You're in the process, and you're able to keep going with the process if the March payment isn't made. Now, it can be more dire. It can be more of a situation where the borrower is simply not able to afford the monthly payment that they agreed to. And it's amazing when you approve a loan, the borrower will almost always bite off more than they can chew if you let them, right? So they'll tell you they can make, I'll make ends meet. Don't worry, we'll figure it out. Your job in the due diligence is to try to assess that. Now, it's not a perfect science. So there's always going to be some risk. Let's say you get to a place where this person just has shown you they can't make the payments. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. If you're in a situation where you can't collect $3,000 a month from someone, it doesn't have to be zero. It's worth having a conversation that says, hey, let me ask you a question. How short are you? Oh, well, I'm only $300 short. So your payment bounced. We went to pick out $3,000 from your account. There was only $2,700 there? Yeah, there was only $2,700 there. We don't have to take zero. Send the $2,700. Send the $2,700. That is the smart thing to do. Now, that can have an impact on the ball rolling down the hill, right? That can pause things, that can interfere. But better to be falling behind by $300 a month than $3,000 a month. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
Absolutely.
the point isn't to say to the audience, it's not to say, oh, everything can be worked out. It's all great with private lending. That's not to say that at all. What I'm saying is the approach that is best suited to a positive result is an approach where you keep a level head. You assume that the borrower wants to pay you, wants to keep their house at all costs, does not want to lose the property. And if you're under that assumption, then it's likely you'll be able to engage in a very productive dialogue. Now, if you do all the diagnosis, if you're really good at it, you're able to get into a conversation where you come away with it and you go, okay, I feel like I asked all the questions, I got all the answers, and now I can unemotionally, because the borrower is emotionally attached to the situation, I can non-emotionally evaluate this and see if there is some sort of better plan than to just push the ball down the hill as fast as it will go and end up repossessing a property and having to market it and sell it. Now, is that an outcome you have to prepare for as well? Yes. Always. You have to be prepared for it. But I'm here to say that you can do hundreds and hundreds of these without having to go that far very often. And I mean, when I say very often, I mean like really seldom. It's I would say a unique situation when you have to go there. I mean, just think who that owns a house and has built 20 or 30 or 40% equity in it wants to lose the property, like lose control of it. Right now, the Canadian system is very, very good in that power of sale is different than foreclosure. Foreclosure, you drop the keys off and that's it. The lender owns the house and sells it, and whatever they sell it for, if there's a profit over and above what they're owed, that's theirs. I might be oversimplifying, but in power of sale, if I take possession, it's a lot of work for me. I have to market the property, sell the property. I got to maintain the property while that's happening. And then when it's all done, I only get what I'm owed plus what I spent, right? So principal, interest, costs, fees, contractual fees, right? So it's nobody's favorite solution. The ideal solution is that we work together and we find a way out where you keep the house and I get my money back.
Now they can stop that snowball at any time, right, Chris?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. They can remedy.
So
they can redeem. They call it redemption.
So,
can redeem the
but
mortgage.
they can, if they bring that loan into good standing after, let's say, we send a demand notice, if they can bring that loan into good standing and they pay everything up, but they're not actually paying the actual loan off, they can come out of enforcement, correct?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And here's the thing this is where discretion matters. Let me ask you this. You go into a loan and it's 10% interest. But or let's say just for really easy math, 12% interest, which is 1% a month. That's why I'm using that math. 12% interest, and you've lent $100,000. So you're expecting to get $1,000 a month. Yeah, with me?
Yep.
Okay. You're expecting to get $1,000 a month. Now, the borrower misses their payment, and in your contract it says if they miss a payment, they owe you $100 for an NSF fee. And then they go into default because they don't make the payment within a week. Now they go into default, and there's another fee for $200 for being in default. And then they end up getting all the way to a demand notice from the lawyers, and your contract says if we have to go through all the trouble to arrange that and send off the file to the lawyer for review and whatnot, it's $500. So now you got $800 in fees, and you're only 15 days or 20 days past when that first payment was due. And your next payment is coming up in 10 days. And the borrower calls you and he goes, hey, I have the $1,000. What do you do?
Well, I mean, you can.
No, they owe you $1,800. What do you do?
But you're saying none of the actions tied to those fees have been executed yet?
No. So the last notice that the person got was you owe $1,800.
Okay. Well, if they're paying, I'd waive it.
Plus the principal at this point. They got a demand notice, so they owe it all, right? They owe it all. So now they come to you and go, listen, sorry, everything went crazy the last couple of weeks. I have the $1,000, and I'm going to have the $1,000 for March 1st. I can get back on track. And you go, well, it's $1,800 just to get back to normal. And you go, and they go, wait, I don't have $1,800. What do you do?
I'd waive it.
Why?
Well, because we're back on track. Like this month is getting paid, and next month is getting paid, supposedly. If we're back on track, I wouldn't want to rock that boat.
Agree?
I think there needs to be some type of consequence, though, because
totally
the borrower,
agree. You guys are,
the borrower has not, if he's not communicated for the first few weeks, and we got to this, and we actually sent it to demand to the lawyers, there's also going to be some lawyer fees as well. That's going to be there. So there has to be some type of consequence, but obviously we'd like to take, the $1,000 payment.
Okay, totally. So the priority, we can all agree, get the loan back on track, right? Take the $1,000 and the $1,000 in March, right? Now, that's what you came for. I'm going to lend you $100. You're going to pay me $1,000 a month. That's what you came for. So the guy calls you and goes, hey, I have what you came for. You don't want to hold up the loan in enforcement and go down this path. It's amazing how many people do this, by the way. Just bite off their nose to spite their face. Okay, the fees are there to keep someone accountable. And yes, they broke the rules. They missed their obligation. They triggered the fee. Yes, they did. I love what Jeff is saying, because what you said was, Nick, I just waive it. And bless you.
I did preface, like, are any of the actions that triggered the fees, were any of those executed? So if legal action was taken and the lawyers were involved, then yeah, those fees need to be recouped.
Sure. But even let's say there's no legal fees. Let's just say it's our fees only. You were coming from the right place. You're coming from a place that goes, I didn't come for the $800. I came for the $1,000. If he's going to pay me the $1,000 and get back on track, great. But here's the problem. And this is what Jeff was sitting on. Jeff has seen this enough times to know that the borrower in the moment will tell you, oh, every payment is going to be perfect from here on in and so on. And if you waive all the $800 right now, you're giving up your leverage. What you might do is say, okay, well, listen, I'll tell you what, I can't waive the $800, but I'll tell you what, we'll leave it on account. Okay. So it's owed, right? And you'd have to pay it at the end. Like when you pay the mortgage back, you'd have to pay it then. But for now, we'll just take the $1,000 and we'll get back on track. And I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. If you make every payment on time from now till the end and you pay out when you're supposed to, I'll cut it in half. And that's what Jeff was getting at. There's still a consequence, because you must leave the message that, hey, there is a consequence. Okay. Now you could do things like, I'm going to give you a one-time courtesy. I'm going to knock off $100 today just because, you called and you want to make good and I want to take your 1,000, want to work with you, give them something, but then it's move it to the end and now you have to work for it, right? You've got to do what you said you were going to do the rest of the way. If this ends up being a one-time occurrence that you got off the rails, well, I'm happy to give you a one-time courtesy at the end. This to me is how you manage loans. If you're in it, okay, if you're a guy who's got his mortgage commitment, and trust me, our commitment has a menu of fees and penalties and charges and whatnot. And if you just looked at it at first glance, you'd say, oh my gosh, you guys are you trying to gouge these people? No, they're all accountability penalties, all of which I would give back in partially or in full in a trade-off for the borrower to just do what they said they were going to do every time 100 out of 100 times. Would never charge a fee.
No, we've said that. We've said this in past episodes. All fees, every single fee is triggered by the borrower.
Every fee is triggered by the borrower. So if you are a person, where I was going with that is, if you got this laundry list of fees and you're licking your chops thinking this is so great, I'm not only going to get my interest, but I'm going to get some of these fees and whatnot, and you're focused on, when someone triggers a fee, you're like celebrating in the back of your head, you are approaching this all wrong, and it will catch up to you, because you should only see the fees as leverage, right? And now, granted, if there's work involved that you have to do to babysit a loan that you weren't expecting to have to babysit, you deserve to be paid. There's no question. That's what administration is. That's how a company like Magnetic makes some of the money that it makes, because we have to employ people to babysit borrowers who don't do what they said they were going to do all the way along. Now, would we trade part of those fees or all of them for a perfect track record from every borrower? Jeff, would we make that trade?
Absolutely.
100 times out of 100. That's what we came for. You know what I mean? That's what we came for. You made a deal. We were about $100,000. You're going to pay us $1,000 a month. I will take not one dime more if you just pay every month $1,000, and then at 12 months pay me back the 100. That's the game. That's what we're here for. So everything should be everything should be with that lens, right? And so the last example I want to give you is, I think this is so key. Remember I told you one of the biggest events of defaults, or most common events of defaults, is going past maturity. This is a very vulnerable piece. I learned this early on, that it's very vulnerable for a lender. You think the maturity date matters, but borrowers don't always respect it. And so what I noticed in the first several years of doing this, my own loans, was we get to maturity and a borrower would go past, sometimes a day, sometimes a few days, sometimes a week, sometimes indefinitely. And I would call the lawyer and I'd say, well, what can I do? And they were like, well, did he make a payment on the first of the last month that he was supposed to? Yeah. Not much you can do. What do you mean, not much I can do? Can I charge him the penalties that are in the thing? Yeah, it's difficult to enforce though. Okay, so what's my leverage? Like, what can I do? Well, all you can do is really kind of, start the process. But, if they're paying every month, it's be difficult to go through the process. So they can just extend this loan indefinitely. That's the feeling I got. Now, nobody ever said that to me. Oh yeah, they can just extend it indefinitely, but that's how it felt. And so we built an entire protocol leading up to maturity, because in one phone call, a lawyer said to me, there is one way that you can avoid people flying past maturity indefinitely without, having to tell you what to do. And I said, well, what is that? He said, well, if you can get them to sign an extension of any kind, it becomes the new agreement and they're contractually obligated to it. So you can't charge penalties and whatnot because they went past maturity, but you can prepare them to buy more time rather than go into enforcement if you are able to explain ahead of time and have it documented that they are aware that at maturity you're intending to go into enforcement unless there is a new agreement in place. So when I realized this, I thought, okay, so we have two choices. We can either let people go past maturity and then try to enforce, but with very little leverage, or we can back up the process from 90 days from maturity, start sending them very detailed notices that say, these are your options leading up to maturity. We have a whole menu of them. You can apply to renew for 12 months. You can apply to extend for 6 months. You can apply to extend for 3 months, or you can apply to extend for a month. If you don't choose any of them, then we're going to demand the loan on the day after maturity, and there's going to be costs. These are going to be the costs, and we outline it all. And it all tailors back to the commitment. So it's all outlined in the commitment and then reiterated so that we're taking away the ability for, we're building a case essentially in the case where all we're taking away is the option to do nothing. If you do nothing, we're setting up that option. So we're telling you, if you do nothing, you have all these options. If you do nothing, then this happens. That is an option as well. In addition, we're laying out all the different conditions around each one of the 4 options, and we're telling them that the options dwindle as they get closer to maturity. So the most options is at 90 days. You have less options at 60, less options at 30, less options at 15, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. We built an entire process around this, not to hurt anybody, just to box people into making a decision. There has to be some decision. And we get that decision usually 10 days or more before the maturity date. Now, are there exceptions? Yes. It's frustrating, very frustrating. But it just means at maturity, we have a decision to make, but we're set up to go into that enforcement process, starting with the demand letter and so on. We can start the snowball rolling down the hill on the day after maturity. So a 12-month loan turns into 14 or 15. Now, granted, we still have to make all those analyses and considerations about what's the status, what's the value. If we start the snowball rolling down the hill, is that where we want to be at the bottom of the hill in 2 or 3 months? But you get the idea. The point is, if you understand and become a student of the process, the snowball rolling down the hill, all the steps involved, and you work backwards from there, you can build an incredibly strong system that will mitigate most of the risk attached to one of the most common events of default. So you can see that we do it with the 2 top ones. Missed payments, we have a whole process around that. Starts with a gentle email followed by a phone call with hopefully a dialogue and so on and so forth. And somebody who's a healthy loan, but just doesn't decide, doesn't apply for anything, just kind of cruises on past. It's like the most frustrating thing in the world. It's like, you're supposed to pay this off. The deal was you have the money for 12 months. We're willing to let you have it for longer. Maybe you have to apply, but you haven't even applied. It's like almost insulting. So we had to build an entire process to safeguard it, because whether we like it or we don't like it, there is more onus, in my opinion, in the legal system on the lender to behave a certain way than there is on the borrower. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's like a bunch of predetermined post-maturity, not exactly enforcement scenarios. So it's like such granular control.
Yeah, it's like if you approach somebody and you ask them a question and you give them 3 answers to choose from, how often do they choose none of the above? It wasn't an option. Now, if you put none of the above as option D, then people choose it.
Mm-hmm.
So we use this strategy to eliminate none of the above. No action, right? Like, no action is the worst thing you can do. That's the most costly. It's how we position it. That is the most costly option. Anything else is better than nothing. And Jeff can tell you, I mean, it's amazing how many people choose the 1 or 3 month extension to buy themselves a little more time. but that comes with a fee. And it is that fee, in my opinion, it's a reasonable fee, but it's that fee that triggers the action necessary to promote an exit before the next fee comes up. Because now they've been through the process. So you sent them down this process. They say, okay, I could do 12 months, 6 months, 3 months, 1 month. The easiest one to get is the 3 months because it's the shortest. And our job is to get you to exit. So if you haven't done anything, if you don't yet have a refinance in place, if you haven't listed the property for sale yet, if you kind of dragged your feet because this is your first time and you didn't realize how structured the process was going to be, going through it the first time is going to show you how structured it is and show you that there's a cost. And then in that next 3 months, that extension period, that's when you're going to pick up your feet. And so 12 months becomes 15 in a lot of cases instead of 18 or 24. And so it's being very wise, in my opinion, about guiding the herd, right? Guiding people to a decision. And to me, it's just prudence, right? All we're trying to do is get to a decision. Just take away the option of do nothing. And that drives incredible results, in my opinion.
It's amazing how many borrowers they'll select the 3 month option and they'll pay out within a month.
They will. They will
month,
really pick up their
days.
feet.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, I don't want to pay anymore.
Yeah, because you know what happens is what's great about the 3 month option, secretively, I kind of sit back and I admire the system for this, is that the maturity protocol process, that's what we call it, maturity protocol, starts with 90 days to go. So you quickly become indoctrinated into this process. You have somebody contacting you. Hey, how are you? What's happening? What are you thinking? Hey, remember 9 months ago when you got this loan, you told us that the exit strategy was going to be this. You were going to, how's that going? You know, and somebody's probing and asking questions. Oh, so it's not going the way it was supposed to go. I understand. Do you need more time? Yeah, I could use more time. Okay, well, we need to get an application in. Well, I'm trying to refinance with my bank, or I'm trying to work with a broker. I kind of like to get back to a bank if I could and pay less money than I'm paying with you guys. Hey, no problem. I get it. But there are deadlines, you know, because if you don't make a decision, like my advice to you is knock on all those doors, but do it now. You know, knock on the bank's door, knock on the broker's door, do all of that now. Don't wait, because the closer you get to the maturity, the less options you have. They go, okay. But they don't always take us seriously. Then all of a sudden options start disappearing and they're left with only sometimes one, and that's the 3 month extension. And they take the 3 month extension, and guess what happens the day after maturity? Nick, what do you think happens?
They take the 3?
Yeah, they take the 3 months. They formalize it at the last minute, right? They went through the process. We told them, hey, deadlines are coming, options are shrinking. And they were like, yeah. And then, you know, it took too much time, ran out of options. Now they've only got one option left. It's a 3 month extension. They take that. Guess what happens the day after maturity?
Nothing.
Maturity protocol starts again. They're 90 days from maturity. Somebody picks up the phone.
Hey,
Hey,
how's it going?
90 days starts
Hey,
again. Okay, so this time they're way
how's it
more
going?
cooperative with Christy.
Yeah. Well, now they know it's for real, right?
Yeah,
when she goes,
yeah.
hey, remember last time how the options, remember? And so, like, to Jeff's point, they go, yeah, I get it now. I get it.
Yeah, the
I'm gonna go
entire
and
tone
talk
is different now, because
That's right.
it's like 90-day protocol, but like during an extension kind of post-maturity environment. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a small cost for us, right? Because as lenders, it turns a 12-month loan into 14 or 13 or 15, but it sends a very clear message to the borrower. And the message isn't a nasty one. The message is just, hey, made an agreement. We're talking about a lot of money, and people forget. Okay, this is the key. And I would say I take this very much to heart in my role at Magnetic. Is I will remind borrowers on a consistent basis, along with their brokers and lawyers, that there's a person on the other side of this, right? When you're telling me all about the borrower, I'm the one that's going to stand up and go, you know, when you needed the money, these guys were here. So let's not screw them, right? Like you said, 12 months, you got to do something. You got to make a decision, right? Like we're not being mean. It's just, this is what you said you would do. We, you know, when we approved it and we said we're going to advance money on the 1st of March, we didn't come to you on the 1st of March and say nothing and then make you call us 3 days later and say, where's the money? Right? Like the money was there, right? You got the money when you were supposed to get the money. So now it's time to pay it back. And we're not even saying you have to pay it back, but you got to do something. You got to make a decision. You got to talk to us. You got to work with us. So when you go through that maturity protocol process, you don't take it seriously the first time. Then you realize, oh my gosh, I'm right back in it again. And there was a consequence last time. There was a 3-month extension signed that came with a fee. And now you understand that there is no free time. Time is money, right? So you're going to pay the longer you have this. And, if you don't make a decision, there's a consequence. That's the message. And it's a fair message. That's how it should be handled. But you have to build that structure. You have to build, and you have to be consistent with that structure. And if you aren't consistent with that structure, the worst part is you're opening up all kinds of loopholes for the borrower to say, well, I didn't know. I didn't realize. Nobody told me. Part of what I do every day is to check, hey, are we documenting the process? Are we making sure that we made a note when we called, right? Hey, we called, we tried. When we say we called 6 times, we have it documented all 6 times, the date, the time, when did we call? This is so important because at any point in the process, what a borrower can do is walk into a lawyer's office and sing the blues and say, these guys are being so rude. They're being so mean to me. I'm just this single parent or whatever it is, right? And the lawyer will believe them and then call us. The lawyer will send a letter and say, I think you guys are acting out of line here. Why are you treating my client like this? And we say, well, can I send you the record? I don't think we were. I don't think we have been. I think we're being fair, but we need her to make a decision. We need him to make a decision. That's all. And a lot of times it gets worked out. So documenting, having structure, all those things, very, very important in our business to managing loans. And I have to remind you here, when we're talking about bad cases, but the vast majority of them are not like that at all. Like the vast majority of people, and I mean a high percentage, want to pay their interest every month, want to exit on time and due or early, so it's
no, understood. Tonight's topic was enforcement. And even though it is like a 1 to 3% of, occurrences, it is typically what's on investors' minds. But the vast majority is smooth sailing for sure.
Absolutely. It's funny. The high percentage of people is smooth sailing, but the high percentage of our time is spent building structures to manage that small percentage that requires additional management.
The post-maturity silver bullet, incentivizing decisions.
I love this topic. I think it's it requires more. Like there's so much more to it. But it's an interesting topic. The final point is just to kind of put a bow on it is just it's so important to build structure into the areas that even though default in and of itself is rare, you can still identify the most common occurrences of default, and you can build structures around them to mitigate them even further. That, to me, is that's the beauty of what we do.
Man, this is a great one.
Yeah, if you do it well, then you'll be a happy lender. So,
great.
Okay, until next time.
Happy lending.
Lending.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Happy lending.